no analysis or self-awareness or mental rigour going on at all, because obsessives are denied any kind of perspective on their own passion. This, in a sense, is what defines an obsessive, and serves to explain why so few of them recognise themselves as such. A fellow fan who last season went to watch Wimbledon reserves against Luton reserves on a freezing January afternoon on his own, not in a spirit of one-upmanship or some kind of self-mocking laddish wackiness, but because he was genuinely interested, recently strenuously denied to me that he was eccentric in any way. Fever Pitch is an attempt to gain some kind of angle on my obsession. Why has the relationship that began as a schoolboy crush endured for nearly a quarter of a century, longer than any other relationship I've made of my own free will? I love my family dearly, but they were rather foisted on me, and I'm no longer in touch with any of the friends I made before I was 14, apart from the only other Arsenal fan at school. And why has this affinity managed to survive my periodic feelings of indifference, sorrow, and very real hatred? The book is also, in part, an exploration of some of the meanings that football seems to contain for many of us. It's become quite clear to me that my devotion says things about my own character and personal history, but the way the game is consumed seems to offer all sorts of information about our society and culture. I have friends who will regard this as pretentious, self-serving nonsense, the kind of desperate justification one might expect from a man who has spent a huge chunk of his leisure time fretting miserably in the cold. They're particularly resistant to the idea because I tend to overestimate the metaphorical value of football and therefore introduce it into conversations where it simply doesn't belong. I now accept that football has no relevance to the Falklands conflict, the Rushdie affair, the Gulf War, childbirth, the ozone layer, the poll tax, etc., etc. And I'd like to take this opportunity to apologise to anyone who has had to listen to my pathetically strained analogies. Finally, Fever Pitch is about being a fan. I've read books written by people who obviously love football, but that's a different thing entirely. And I've read books written, for want of a better word, by hooligans. But at least 95% of the millions who watch games every year have never hit anyone in their lives. So this is for the rest of us, and for anyone who's wondered what it might be like to be this way. While the details here are unique to me, I hope that they'll strike a chord with anyone who's ever found themselves drifting off in the middle of a working day or a film or a conversation towards a left-foot volley into a top right-hand corner 10 or 15 or 25 years ago. 1968 to 1975. Home debut. Arsenal v Stoke City, 14th of September 1968. I fell in love with football, as I was later to fall in love with women. Suddenly, inexplicably, uncritically, giving no thought to the pain or disruption it would bring with it. In May 68, a date with connotations of course, but I'm still more likely to think of Jeff Astle than of Paris, just after my 11th birthday, my father asked me if I'd like to go with him to the FA Cup final between West Brom and Everton. A colleague had offered him a couple of tickets. I told him that I wasn't interested in football, not even in the cup final. True, as far as I was aware, but perversely, I watched the whole match on television anyway. A few weeks later, I watched the Man United Benfica game, enthralled, with my mum. And at the end of August, I got up early to hear how United had got on in the final of the World Club Championship. I loved Bobby Charlton and George Best. I knew nothing about Dennis Law, the third of the Holy Trinity, who had missed the Benfica match through injury, with a passion that had taken me completely by surprise. It lasted 3 weeks, until my dad took me to Highbury for the first time. My parents were separated in 1968. My father had met someone else and moved out, and I lived with my mother and my sister in a small detached house in the home counties. This state of affairs was unremarkable enough in itself, although I can't recall anyone else in my class with an absent parent. The 60s took another 7 or 8 years to travel the 20-odd miles down the M4 from London. But the breakup had wounded all 4 of us in...